All right, let's dive into a story from ancient Rome that honestly sounds completely made up. It's a tale of iron, salt, and an emperor who decided to pick a fight with the ocean itself.
And that's really the heart of it, isn't it? It's one of the strangest questions in all of military history. How on earth did the most disciplined, feared army on the planet, the Roman legions, end up in a formal, declared battle with the English Channel?
Okay, so first up, let's get into the story that pretty much everyone has heard for the last 2,000 years. It's a tale of absolute power and what looks an awful lot like absolute madness.
So picture this. It's the year 40 CE. You're on the northern coast of Gaul, what we now call France. The Roman Emperor Caligula has his legions all drawn up in full battle formation. Armor polished, shields up, standards held high. And their enemy? The tide. According to the historians, what happened next was just surreal. Caligula gives the command and his soldiers charge into the surf, stabbing the waves with their swords. Catapults and ballistas, heavy artillery, are aimed at the ocean. And then, once the battle was over, the soldiers were ordered to collect the spoils of war. And get this, they filled their helmets with seashells, as plunder taken from the defeated god Neptune.
Now, to really get how bizarre this all is, you have to understand who Caligula was to these guys. Because before he was the mad emperor everyone talks about, he was the army's absolute favorite. He was their mascot.
I mean, this guy wasn't some sheltered noble who'd never seen a battlefield. He literally grew up in military camps with his dad, who was this legendary general. The soldiers loved him as a kid. They even gave him his famous nickname, Caligula, which means little boots, because he wore these tiny, custom-made military sandals. So when he became emperor, they saw him as one of their own. He was the soldiers' emperor.
And that's the real puzzle, right? If the army was his whole base of power, if these men adored him and he knew them inside and out, why in the world would he make them do something so ridiculous, so humiliating? The whole "he was just crazy" story starts to feel way too simple.
All right, so let's rewind. Let's go back to that beach in Boulogne. What was actually going on there? What was the real reason for this so-called war on the sea?
Well, the big plan was a full-scale Roman invasion of Britain. A huge deal. But as the legion stood on the coast, looking out at that foggy, mysterious island across a really dangerous channel, some sources say their courage just broke. They refused to get on the ships. It was a full-blown mutiny.
Now, this is super important. Our main source for this whole story is the Roman historian Suetonius, and he was writing decades after Caligula died. He paints this picture of a totally unhinged, petty tyrant. But you have to remember, Suetonius was writing for a new dynasty, and it was kind of his job to make the previous emperors look as terrible as possible.
And this is where things get really interesting. Modern historians have started digging into this story, asking some tough questions, and trying to find the truth hidden behind the myth, and behind those seashells.
So here's the big question that changes everything. What if we've been looking at this all wrong? What if Caligula wasn't insane? What if he was just furious? And what if his actions on that beach weren't madness at all, but a calculated, brutal act of psychological revenge on the army that dared to defy him?
So you've got these two totally different ways of looking at the same event. The myth says he's a lunatic, but the theory suggests he's a brilliant, vengeful commander. Just think about it. It's like he's saying, oh, you refuse to fight the Britons? Fine, you're not worthy of a real enemy. Your new enemy is the water. You want the spoils of war? Here, have some seashells. That's all you cowards deserve. Suddenly, it's not madness, it's a masterclass in humiliation.
But wait, there's actually a third possibility, and it all comes down to one little Latin word, conche. Now yes, it means seashells, but it might have also been military slang for something else entirely, maybe small Gallic huts, or as some now think, small scout boats. Is it possible he just told his men to gather the boats for a scouting run, and the story got twisted by his enemies into something totally different?
Okay, so this table lays it all out for us perfectly. Let's break it down. You've got theory number one, insanity. The only real evidence is from those ancient historians who already hated him. Theory two, punishment. This one fits perfectly with the mutiny. It makes a ton of sense. And theory three, mistranslation. A simple linguistic mix-up that has echoed through history for 2,000 years.
And just to add another layer of weirdness to this whole thing, Caligula actually built a monument. A massive lighthouse was constructed right there at Boulogne to commemorate his victory. So was this the final crazy act of a madman celebrating a fake war? Or was it a cynical, permanent reminder to his army of the day he put them in their place?
So where does all this leave us? Was Caligula's war on the sea an act of madness, or was it a cold, calculated masterstroke? The truth is, the evidence lets us completely rewrite that simple verdict history handed down to us.
So here's the bottom line. The Caligula we think we know, the cartoon villain who fought the sea, he might not be the real guy. Instead, we could be looking at a far more complex, much more interesting figure, a cunning, maybe even cruel, and deeply vengeful leader who was systematically torn down by the people who wrote his story.
And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. If a story this famous, this accepted as fact, could be totally based on a misunderstanding or straight-up propaganda, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many of history's other famous madmen are just waiting for us to take a second look?